Let's quiet the noise and face what most men avoid. When a relationship falls apart, it rarely shatters like glass. It erodes like stone in slow rain, silently, gradually, invisibly. No sirens, no headlines, just small, almost forgettable moments that slowly hollow everything out. By the time you realize what's missing, it's not just her affection, it's your peace. They never prepared you for this, not in school, not in movies, not even in the advice passed down from men before you. But if you've ever sat across from the woman you love and felt a distance you couldn't explain, if her presence feels physical but her spirit feels elsewhere, you're not paranoid. You're perceptive. You're not emotional. You're evolving. This video isn't about jumping to conclusions, it's about waking up. It's about learning to read the subtle language of withdrawal, detachment, and emotional decay. And if you're ready to understand what most men overlook, not with anger, but with clarity, you're in the right place. Welcome to Stoic 24. Subscribe now and learn how a grounded man doesn't chase shadows. He reads patterns, protects his peace, and never loses himself trying to hold on to someone who's already slipping. The first sign, her presence becomes performance. She's still there, still cooking dinner, still texting you good night, still asking how your day went, but something is off, and you feel it before you even understand it. Her smile still shows up, but now it feels like a costume. Her tone is still soft, but it's mechanical, like she's reciting a script instead of speaking from the heart. This is where most men get confused, because nothing explosive is happening. She's not packing bags or picking fights. She's showing up physically but emotionally. She's on the next train out. And the hardest part is she's trying to make you feel like everything's normal, when deep down, she knows it's not. Here's where the Stoic mind becomes a weapon, not a weakness. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength," and that applies here. You can't control her mask, but you can trust your perception. You notice the difference between presence and performance, because you've trained yourself to see the invisible, the silence between the words, the absence in her eyes, the way she touches you, like she's somewhere else. She may not say it, but her soul is already halfway gone. And if you keep ignoring your gut, you're not being loyal. You're being blind. Here's the emotional punch. She's not lying with her words. She's lying with her energy. And a Stoic man doesn't need evidence to believe in his intuition. Because when love stops being shared and starts being acted, you don't have a relationship anymore. You have a performance, and eventually, every act comes to an end. Second sign, her world becomes private property. There was a time when you knew her day before she even lived it, not because you asked for a schedule, but because she wanted to share. She invited you into the small things, the coffee she spilled on her way to work, the song that reminded her of your first date, even the co-worker drama that didn't matter but somehow still made you feel close. That was intimacy in its purest form, voluntary openness. But now, you find yourself piecing her life together like an outsider. You don't know where she is until she's already there. You hear about things after they've happened, if at all. And when she does talk, it's clipped, polished, just enough to seem normal, just enough to avoid suspicion. You notice the little changes first. She doesn't bring up her day unless you ask. The stories are safe, sanitized highlights. Nothing raw, nothing real. You ask how her meeting went. It was fine. You ask who she was texting, just a friend. That phone, the one that used to be left unlocked, left on the couch, left forgotten, now travels with her everywhere. Face down, locked, notifications off. And suddenly asking a question feels like committing a crime. She throws out words like control, trust, and independence. But let's be honest, trust isn't the absence of questions, it's the presence of truth. A Stoic knows that clarity is the foundation of peace. Seneca once wrote, "No man can have a whole, peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it." The same applies to relationships. You cannot have peace in love if you're constantly trying to preserve the illusion of connection while reality drifts. You feel the distance, even if you can't name it. And here's the brutal truth. When someone starts building walls where there used to be windows, it's not about privacy. It's about exclusion. A woman who's truly connected to you doesn't make you guess. She doesn't protect her phone like it's sacred scripture. She doesn't make you feel like a spy for caring, because real love doesn't hide behind locked screens and clever excuses. Real love doesn't flinch at transparency. And real love doesn't make honesty feel like interrogation. It makes it feel like home. Third sign, her intimacy becomes inconsistent. At first glance, everything seems unchanged. She still sleeps beside you. The same bed, the same room, the same rhythm of breath in the dark. But you feel it. Something sacred has shifted. What used to be a haven now feels like a stage, and you're not her lover anymore. You're the audience. Some nights she turns her back without a word, like your presence is just furniture. Other nights she initiates with a fire that feels off, too much, too sudden, like she's compensating for something unspoken. It's not closeness, it's choreography. You feel the tension in her hands, the absence in her kiss. It's not that she's gone, her body's still here. But her presence, her essence, is nowhere to be found. And that's what cuts deepest. It's not the lack of sex, it's the lack of meaning behind it. A Stoic knows this truth well. Real intimacy cannot be faked. It is not measured in frequency, but in energy, in how two people show up for each other, soul first. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And when her thoughts are elsewhere, on someone else or a world that excludes you, her soul no longer meets yours, even in the closest moments. You're not paranoid. You're not needy. You're simply honest enough to feel what's missing, and here's the tragic mistake so many men make. They respond with more. More gifts, more effort, more desperate touches, hoping to resurrect something that died in silence. But attention cannot revive a connection already buried. Affection cannot fix a bond that's been emotionally foreclosed. Fourth sign, arguments come from nowhere. It starts subtle. You reply 10 minutes late and suddenly you're distant. You suggest a different route to dinner and now you're controlling. You offer an opinion and you're always critical. At first it catches you off guard. You start double-checking your tone, your words, your very presence, wondering how the smallest things became reasons for tension. But here's the truth. You're not walking on eggshells because you're wrong. You're walking on them because she needs you to be wrong. Why? Because when someone carries unspoken guilt, your calmness becomes confrontation. Your consistency, your grounded presence, it threatens the narrative she's building inside. A narrative where she is the one being mistreated, unappreciated, pushed away. So instead of owning the growing detachment, she rewrites the script. You're not just a partner anymore. You're now the emotional scapegoat. Your silence becomes coldness. Your stability becomes indifference. Not because that's who you are, but because it's what her guilt needs you to be. This is emotional projection at its peak. And this is where the Stoic man's mindset becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. But if they are just reacting emotionally, then their judgment is not my burden." A Stoic doesn't argue over surface symptoms. He watches for the root. And when the root is no longer love, but manipulation, avoidance, and rewriting history, he lets the branch fall. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. See, when a woman is preparing to leave emotionally, or has already left in secret, she needs justification. She needs to convince herself that you're the problem. So she invents conflict, not to fix it, but to free herself from the guilt of walking away. Manufactured chaos becomes her permission slip. And if you fall into the trap of constantly defending yourself, you're not protecting the relationship, you're enabling her escape. You're playing a rigged game, apologizing for crimes you didn't commit. So stop, step back, observe without reacting. A grounded man doesn't waste his breath, proving his innocence to someone who's already decided to leave. He doesn't plead for peace in a war he didn't start. He listens to what the arguments really mean, not what's being said, but why it's being said. And when he realizes that love has been replaced with strategy, he doesn't beg to stay, a broken play. He exits with dignity. Because sometimes the most powerful move a man can make is not playing the game at all. Final sign, your calm becomes her discomfort. There was a time when your presence was her anchor. Your silence meant safety. Your stillness meant strength. When life felt chaotic, you were the eye of the storm, unshaken, steady, reliable. But now, that same calm unsettles her. Your silence no longer brings her comfort, it makes her squirm. Because it's not just silence anymore, it's a mirror. And she sees herself in it, and doesn't like what she sees. You haven't changed, but her story has. She used to value your discipline, your restraint, your quiet leadership. Now those same qualities feel like judgment. Not because you're judging her, but because your stability highlights her internal chaos. She's no longer seeking harmony with you. She's seeking justification for the distance, for the detachment, for the quiet betrayals she hasn't admitted even to herself. And when you don't lose your cool, when you don't spiral with her, she can't use your emotions to validate hers. That's when she starts to pull back. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stayed true while she started drifting. This is the part that cuts deepest. Not her absence, not even her betrayal. What stings is the realization that your love, once a gift, became something she had to reject to protect her own narrative. She can't keep loving you and keep lying to herself at the same time. So she distances herself. She labels your calm as cold, your peace as passivity. But that's her guilt speaking. That's her inner conflict trying to justify leaving a man who never stopped showing up. And here's where Stoicism comes in. Not as a shield, but as a compass. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." Her reaction is not your responsibility. Her confusion is not your burden. Your grounded energy, your composed spirit, it's not up for negotiation. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't try to rewrite yourself to fit into someone else's emotional fog. A Stoic man walks away, not because he's bitter, but because he refuses to betray himself to stay lovable in someone else's chaos. This isn't about pride, it's about principle. You don't stay where love becomes an obligation. You don't confuse being silent with being passive. You observe, you accept, and then you act with dignity, not in rage, not in pain, but in clarity. Because you finally realize her rejection of your calm isn't a flaw in you, it's a fracture in her. And when you walk away from that confusion, you don't lose her, you find yourself.